Sony or Sony Group Corporation is a Japanese multinational company founded in 1946, whose brand name has become one of the most famous in the world. According to experts from different countries, Sony has remained the most recognizable brand in the field of electronics for several decades. The company was founded by two friends, Akio Morita and Masaru Ibuka. Akio Morita graduated from Osaka University with a degree in physics, while Masaru Ibuka graduated from Waseda University in Tokyo with a degree in electronics engineering. Akio and Masaru met when they both worked for a government research organization dealing with various military equipment. Akio Morita has loved music and electronics since childhood. While still in his school years, Morita assembled his first radio receiver. Sony's history began with a small repair shop for radios and other electronics. Masaru Ibuka started this humble business. In the early days, Ibuka repaired and even built everything himself, including rice cookers and heaters. Ibuka wanted to create a serious company specializing in communications equipment, but in the post-war years, the entrepreneur had to take on anything that brought any profit. When Akio Morita joined Ibuka, the partners decided to incorporate the company, which they named Tokyo Tsushin Kojyo Kabushiki Kaisha. The shortened version was Tatsuko. The full name stood for Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation. Despite such a serious name, the company had limited initial capital and thus limited opportunities. However, Ibuka and Morita were determined to make great strides. Their goal was not only to launch a successful production. Akio and Masaru wanted to develop Japanese culture and give the country something new and progressive. In the early 50s, Morita thought about a new company name, which could easily be pronounced by potential partners and customers from other countries. The choice was not an easy one. Morita and Ibuka consulted several dictionaries and searched a lot of trendy English words. Most of all, they were interested in the words sonus and sunny, meaning sound, and sunny in Latin and English, respectively. However, the name had to sound good not only in English-speaking countries, but also in all other countries, including Japan itself. As a result, Morita came up with the idea of combining the two words mentioned and removing the second N to avoid incorrect interpretation in Japan. At the same time, Morita wanted to keep the sound. The word Sony fit perfectly and remain in the name forever. The company started producing its first full-fledged devices back in the late 40s. In 1949, the company introduced a tape recorder, and a year later, magnetic film. The G-type reel-to-reel tape recorder was the first device in its category in Japan. Initially, the model was used in courts and other government institutions, as the country lacked stenographers. In 1951, Sony released the H1 consumer reel-to-reel tape recorder for home use. The model looked unusual and featured a handle for transportation. Closer to the middle of the 50s, Sony began producing its own transistors based on technology from Bell Laboratories. The Japanese bought the rights to these technologies from Western Electric. Thus, in 1955, Sony released a radio receiver TR-55 based on new transistors that allowed to make devices more compact and economical than conventional tube models. Another 2 years later, the company introduced the TR-63 pocket receiver, which was, in fact, the world's first portable gadget for listening to the radio. However, the real breakthrough was the TR-610 pocket receiver. The model was very popular both in Japan and in the USA. By the end of the 50s, the company had managed to develop well, launch advertising, and issue its own shares. At that time, Sony had already begun development of its first VCR and was also engaged in the creation of the world's first portable transistorized television. This project was Ibuka's dream, and it's worth noting that the dream came true already in 1960 when the TV8301 mini television went on sale. American experts thought that the model would fail, but it not only sold well, but also became the basis for the next mini television TV5303, which in the early 60s was one of the most purchased products in the United States. The success of this model in the West was due to the rapidly growing automobile industry. Car owners were eager to buy the miniature TV5303 due to its lightness, compactness, and ease of use. Japan itself even produced special car holders for this mini TV. Around the same period, Sony released a reel-to-reel tape recorder with a built-in amplifier TC777. The model was also successful. Due to its appearance and success, Sony engineers ventured into a larger project, the world's first transistorized integrated amplifier, the TA1120. This unit revolutionized the industry. The model had significantly lower distortion than its tube counterparts, and the TA1120 boasted a guaranteed 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms. In '63, Sony showed the PV100 professional video recorder, which weighed about 60 kilograms. This model was used during the 1964 Olympic Games in Tokyo. Following the professional PV100, the company released the domestic CV2000, which allowed to make hour-long recordings. In the same year, Sony developed the 19C70 color television, released the first compact cassette tape, and the first portable cassette recorder TC100. Later, Sony introduced its Sobax desktop calculator. In addition to a number of important innovations, in the 60s Sony came up with a concept of a unified design for all its products. Norio Oga, who had joined the company in the 50s, was responsible for this idea. Norio was sure that all the company's products should be created in the same style. Specially created design department, where all the developers of the company began to work, allowed to achieve good results. Communicating with each other in the process of creating new devices, engineers and designers of Sony agreed to use black and silver color scheme for all products. The approach gradually evolved into a unified corporate concept called black and silver. A striking example of this concept was the TFM 110 receiver. Also, the development of the new design was promoted by the ICR 100 model, which had a weight of 90 grams and a battery with a 6-hour battery life, which at the time was a great breakthrough. In the late 60s, Sony launched a line of Trinitron TVs. The first model was a home color TV, KV1310, which was characterized by high brightness. The basis of the Trinitron kinescope was a single 3-beam electron cannon. Other televisions of the time used 3 separate cannons. In 1968, the CBS Sony Records record label was established. This label later became known as Sony Music. The 70s proved to be no less eventful for Sony than the 60s. In the early 70s, the company opened new offices in the United States, Spain, France, and England. In parallel, the company continued to develop video equipment, producing new models of tape recorders, including VP1100 U-matic, VO1700 U-matic, and Betamax SL6300 with cassettes on 12.7mm films. In 1977, Sony launched sales of the KV1375 TV, which featured touch-sensitive controls and a special CRT for high brightness and clarity. In the summer of 1979, as if wanting to compensate for the lack of audio equipment in the catalog, Sony launched one of its most important products of all time. It was cassette portable player Walkman TSP L2, which not only became a popular product, but changed the way of life of many people. Interestingly, the portable player was originally developed by Sony engineers simply as a personal gadget for Masaru Ibuka, who often flew by airplane and wanted to spend his time with benefit. The project was handled by a special department with Kozo Osona at the head. When the team realized that the Walkman would appeal not only to Masaru, but also to many other transport board passengers, it was decided to put the Walkman into production. The international launch of the product took place in 1980. Just a year later, Sony released the WM2, the second version of the player. At the same time, Sony, together with Philips, introduced the first version of the CD. The familiar music CDs appeared in stores in 1982. At first, CDs were not widely available, but with the introduction of CD players, including the world's first home Sony CDP-101 player, the proliferation of CDs began to gain momentum. The format proved successful, and Sony decided to develop a portable disc player. The Discman D50 was the first in the new line. After the successful launch of the mentioned products, the company decided to return to the creation of video equipment. In the second half of the 80s, the manufacturer launched the HDVS high-definition video system, began selling the CCD V8 camcorder, and released a compact camera CCD TR55 Handycam, which became the basis for a whole generation of amateur camcorders. In 1989, Sony, already a global giant, bought the movie company Columbia Pictures, which was renamed Sony Pictures Entertainment. Last decade of the 20th century, the company met with a TV KW3600 HD with HD Trinitron screen with an aspect ratio of 16:9. The model received not only an advanced display system, but also support for high-definition television. In 1992, Sony introduced the MiniDisk format, which was supposed to replace conventional compact discs. This did not happen, however MiniDisk fans exist to this day. A year later, Sony launched a division called Sony Computer Entertainment, which was later named Sony Interactive Entertainment. This subsidiary focused on video games and consoles. The company released its first in-house game console, the PlayStation, in 1994. Initially, Sony was only developing a CD module for Nintendo, which was supposed to allow the launch of disc-based games on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System console. However, the collaboration with Nintendo did not materialize, and the CD module became a separate game project overseen by Ken Kutaragi. His enthusiasm allowed Sony to see the project through to completion, that is, to release its own game console. The product proved to be a success. Under Ken Kutaragi's management, the second and third versions of the PlayStation were also released. In 2007, Kutaragi left the post of the manager of Sony Computer Entertainment. The second half of the 90s was a period of product line revision for Sony. The company began to pay more and more attention to digital technologies. In '95, the company released a camcorder DCR-VX1000 with support for the digital video format. Another year later was presented digital camera DSC-F1 with a display. In parallel, Sony launched the sale of Vaio laptops. One of the most significant products of the end of the decade were the HD video camera HDW700 and a new flat-screen TV. And, of course, the SACD format, which was also worked on by engineers from Philips. In the early 2000s, Sony introduced several revolutionary products. Among them was the IDT-LF wireless TV from the Airboard line with a touch panel screen and Wi-Fi receiver. Also at this time appeared the first video recorder with a built-in hard disk SVR715 and DVD recorder RDR-A1, supporting disc standard DVD-RW or DVD-R. In 2001, Sony Ericsson Mobile Communications, the joint venture company, was founded to produce cell phones. In 2002, Sony acquired the Japanese company Iwa and began production of LCD TV series Vega, including the model KLV-17HR1. At the same time, the world's first Blu-ray recorder, the BDZ-S77, was introduced, allowing HD video to be recorded to Blu-ray disc. In 2004, Sony introduced an experimental LCD panel with 4K resolution. In the same year, Sony BMG Music Entertainment was founded. 2005 saw the release of the HDR-HC1, the world's smallest HD camera supporting 1080i recording. Later in the year, the Bravia KDL46x1000, the first widescreen LCD TV with HDTV support, was also released. In 2007, Sony launched the Akio, the world's first TV with an 11-inch OLED display featuring high contrast, rich color reproduction, and fast response. In 2010, Sony introduced Sony Internet TV on the Google TV platform. In 2011, the company released the first wireless headphones with support for multi-channel 3D sound. In 2012, Sony introduced the KD84X9000 TV with 4K resolution and built-in upscaler. In 2019, Sony's 98-inch LCD TV with 8K resolution was shown at CES, which was a new achievement in the industry. Among the main achievements of the company over the past 5 years, we can highlight the 5th version of the PlayStation console with improved performance. The company also made serious progress in the field of noise-canceling headphones. Also, Sony continued to develop a series of portable Walkman players and updated the line of Bravia TVs, launching models with AI Cognitive Processor XR to improve sound and video. Among other things, Sony continues to develop its immersive 360 reality audio technology. This technology uses object-oriented spatial audio to create a surround sound effect. The system's specialty is the ability to place audio elements, vocals, instruments, effects, at specific points around the listener, creating a 360-degree spatial effect. As of 2024, Sony Group Corporation employs about 110,000 people worldwide. The head of Sony is Kenichiro Yoshida, who started working in one of Sony's divisions back in 2000. Today, Sony owns dozens of divisions in different countries. The corporation is engaged not only in home electronics, but also in automobiles, robots, movies, telecommunications, and many other areas. You have watched a video about the history of the Japanese company Sony. Thank you very much for watching. I would like to ask you to like and subscribe if you are not already subscribed to my channel. Thank you all and see you next video.